Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of the Disruptive Franchise Podcast. I am joined today by the wonderful Faye from Nature Makers. Hi, Faye.
Hi, Stacey. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being on. So you are one of our previous award winners way back in 2024, and one of our awards being Revolutionary Franchise, which is exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, it
Very cool.
was. Yeah.
Feels like forever ago, 2024.
Because when you say back then, it's like, wow, what has happened to my personal life, to everything, the business, the world, the economy, everything. It's weird.
Everything.
But yeah, it was nice. It was nice to be crowned that Revolutionary Franchise of the year at the Disruptive Franchise Award. I like the disruptiveness. I like that. I'm edgy. I'm a rebel. So it's like, yes, okay, if I'm gonna win something, it's that's my back.
I'm with you, absolutely with you, because I think that disruption and the edgy and the rebel, like that's where we grow, isn't it? Like that's
Yeah,
I love it.
absolutely. Changing the status quo and just saying, can we do something different and just being yourself? Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about you actually. Like whenever I see you on socials and whenever we have a chat, like you are just you. You just do you. And I love that because I think that a lot of people struggle with that, if I'm honest. So it's
Yeah.
really refreshing. Tell us a little bit about you and Nature Makers, because obviously I know you really well, but our listeners don't yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, well, we started back in 2019. Really, I was still in the corporate world and I had a young son. He was about 18 months at the time. And I was taking him to like a forest school. I didn't really know what forest school was at the time, but we were taking him to an equivalent of that. Really loving it, and kind of I'm starting to think, well, he loves this, I love this, and there's more to life than in my corporate world. I have a degree in business strategy, so it was always my intention to have a business. But when you're 25, 30, like you're racking your brains for what business can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And it just doesn't come. You can't kind of force it. It needs to kind of develop organically. And that's very much what Nature Makers was for me, from seeing the joy that myself and my young son got and actually saying, okay, where can I take this idea and make it my idea? Bring into it the outdoor element, but then the nature, obviously the nature element, but then the creativity as well. We're a very creative family. My husband's an artist. So it was bringing the creativity and nature together in a business model that could work indoors as well as outdoors. Because obviously I saw a lot of the forest school, times that got cancelled. And I was like, oh man, if only this could work indoors as well. So it started very much as kind of our own need, really, as a family. But if I'm honest, the intention was always to franchise the company. And that's something I didn't actually explicitly say in the early days. I felt that I had to kind of project an image of just creating this class. And yeah, we were enjoying it and we were testing it. We were seeing what works. But fundamentally, behind the scenes, I was making sure that the business model was set up, that everything was kind of audit ready to have the documents ready to hand over. And it kind of was crazy, actually, how fast. When I look back now, I don't think I acknowledged at the time how fast I franchised, because I had the first person, I delivered my class, and 6 weeks later, the first person reached out to ask me if I could franchise to them. 6 weeks, which I didn't appreciate at the time, was crazy fast. I mean, like now, wow. And actually, it wasn't that person that I had as my first pilot franchise, but less than 6 months later, I did have my first one. So, and unfortunately, that was 2 weeks before lockdown.
Mm.
So it was like, yeah, it wasn't the best timing, but actually, again, it helped us to evolve. And I think, that particular evolution then was a case of saying, okay, so we were doing a lot of stuff inside. Now we have to do even more outside, and to just switch things up really and develop it in different ways. And from there, it grew and grew, and we got more franchisees around the country. We also developed different revenue streams. So I love that, I want people that have that, I call it creatively curious and determined. That's what you need to make a business. Any business, whether it's a franchise business or any business, that's what you need to succeed in the long term. And I want creative people coming on board. So I can't then say to them, sorry, you have to follow all of these rules. And so you can't possibly come up with your own creative art idea in the class, So of course, we have brand guidelines, we have things like that. But, you know, I make sure that we're taking on board people that get it, get the values, get what we stand for, and that understand that and the way that we work. So that actually, yes, if they want to create within our framework, there is the opportunity for them. And like I say, from that, we've developed so many different revenue streams as well, which has really supported us as, the economy, the society, everything has changed and transitioned in the last 6 years. So it's been a journey. And just recently at the end of 2025, I decided to pivot the business as well. And so that's kind of our last evolution that we've had. And that was taking it more into the whole life natural well-being. So out of just children's activities, though fundamentally what we do is the same, but actually it's just saying to the world, actually, yeah, guys, we actually have been in care homes. We have been in the prison service. We have been at national trusts. We do this, we do that. So we're actually just bringing it together now, saying it and telling people that what we do is mindful. It is good for your well-being, and developing training around that to support the teams. Yeah, it's been good journey, always learning, always creatively curious and determined, and having fun.
Love that. There's so much to unpick in there. I love
Yeah,
it. What really strikes me about your business is that it's very wholesome, and I love the concept. But when I think of your business, I always think about how strong your values are. Your values really shine through in everything that you
oh,
do
thank
in your
you.
franchisees. And I want to come back to being disruptive in the franchise in a minute as well. Tell
Yeah.
us about why the values of your business are so important and how they've led you into like those kinds of innovations like you've just said.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. I think, from day one, it was very much a case of what's the overall brand and what are the values and where are they my values? And, how am I going to champion this and make sure that we communicate it to the franchisees, to the clients, so that we call in the right people that get it, that don't think it's weird, and we've got it wrong on occasion, we've called in the wrong people or we've not communicated the right thing to make sure that we're getting that alignment. And that's learning. And that's how it works and you evolve. But our values fundamentally, they have roughly stayed pretty much the same. Only one of them has slightly changed. And recently, with the move into whole life natural well-being, have we explicitly stated nature as a well-being co-facilitator, really, as one of our values. And so actually, we do weave it into everything. So, creativity, it's fundamentally for me, it's not art skills. We're not saying we're going to make, whether we're talking about a preschooler where we started, or a 16-year-old or a 60-year-old or even a 96-year-old, because we do work in care homes. We're not saying we want to provide art skills and say, this is how you must do it. Creativity is about so much more than that. And it comes into, everything, the way you think, the way you process things. And we're all different. And then we've got, children and adults with neurodivergence, for instance. And that brings to it a whole different awareness of thinking differently, which is amazing. And many of my team and myself included are neurodiverse as well. So we're very supportive of that. Creativity, it looks, it's different to everyone. So celebrating that, not, in the early days when I was testing out the business model, I would rock up to my preschool class with, I remember once, it was hilarious, like a paper plate that was done like a wreath and it had like leaves around. It always cracks me up. And I always say to new franchisees, don't do this. Don't ever have like a finished piece, apart from say our Willow workshops where they need to know what the heck a bird feeder looks like, otherwise we're going to end up with things in weird places. But certainly for the children's classes, when an adult was present, don't rock up with a finished piece, a blue Peter, here's one I did earlier, because the adult will obsess over that finished piece. And he'll be like, why has my 4-year-old not created a wreath that looks like that? And I'm like, because I'm 35. That's why. I'm not that age anymore. But, that's what it always cracked up to me. So It very much creativity and going with that. And also, how can I be a champion of nature? And this is something that I struggle with some forest schools, if I'm honest, and the ethos of it, is get them out into nature and love nature. And yeah, that's what we do. But then they go, oh, here's some PVA paint, a PVA glue, or here's some plastic based paint, or here's something else. I mean, I went to one and my daughter came home and I was like, well, that t-shirt is going in the bin because whatever chemicals are in that, it's now all over you and it's not coming out of the clothes. And we don't do that. So, and I'm going to be honest, it's a challenge. It is a real challenge to find, sustainable art supplies, vegan inclusive as well, to find art supplies that actually are good quality, ideally from the UK. That has been a real challenge, and especially since Brexit. Unfortunately, that pushed a lot of UK suppliers under, or just made things so much more challenging. So we do our best, and we do reuse and recycle and use work with nature as well. And so, yeah, I felt like, how could we say we're sustainable if we then, like I say, throw down non-sustainable art products? So everything that we do weaves into that. And I very much communicate the brand, ethos to the team, to franchisees, whether they're new. Obviously, they know that's part of their training. But, occasionally we don't know certain things, like AI has thrown up a big question around that. It's not something they even needed to write into the operating manual like 5 years ago,
Yeah.
Now we need a whole policy on it. And so it's learning and adapting for all of us. To make sure that we are following those, we are all representing the brand and our values of inclusivity as well, educational, all of these. Because, that's the reason why we've got national trusts reaching out to us, and charities and councils. I sometimes describe myself as a glorified PA, that sits there at head office taking everybody's like emails that come to me, and I say, oh, right, this is your local franchise, and directing it out to them. That's what comes with a really solid brand strategy. And part of your brand strategy absolutely has to be your values. And they cannot just be something that you just slap on a poster and say, there we go, let's see about it. People can see. People see. They look at what's going on, the photos, the videos behind the scenes, all of those things, and they can see whether you're living it or if it's just a tick box. Absolutely.
It's that authenticity, isn't it? And I think a lot of businesses, a lot of franchises that I speak to, they didn't come from a business background. They didn't have that
Yeah.
business
Yeah.
strategist, the grounding that you had, and I have it.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like you start and you're kind of making it up as you go along in the best possible
Yeah.
way, being creative, and then the business kind of flows and snowballs. But I think it's so important for solid business growth and authentic solid business
Yeah.
growth
Yeah.
to have that strategy in place. And you said, like just now, like knowing that you get a franchise and
Yeah.
the values that you have, and the reason that they shine through so strongly is because it's grounded in strategy. You're not going to go and pick a random supplier. You're going to go and
Yeah.
actually do due diligence on them first. I think for the kind of people that are going to come to your classes and really enjoy that and have those connected values, it's so important to be authentic in what you're presenting. Like you say, like the PVA glue example, like brilliant, because it's
Yeah.
something that, unless you are truly following those values, you maybe don't
Yeah.
think about it.
No.
Um,
Yeah.
I love that about it. I love that everything is based in strategy in a world of chaos, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And the thing is, because you're trained strategically as well. We have to think as well as like what's called barriers to entry. And in a world where people can just train in something and go off and do it, or go, oh, I like the look of that on Instagram, I might try and copy that and set up something like that. A barrier to entry is more better reinforced by having that solid brand, that personal brand, that solid brand with the values, those partnerships, those collaborations, that depth of experience, the positioning. All of that becomes a barrier to entry for other people trying to take your work, basically trying to just muscle in on, "Oh, I think I might have a go at that." And we've had people over the years, of course, and when I was doing classes locally, and That's the that's the individual franchisee will have this conversation. Gosh, this is like opened up down the road, and I'm like, don't worry, because I've looked at what they've got going on, and I know that the business model is either not set up to succeed long term, because I can see they haven't thought about this. They're pushing something else that's, you've got all these different revenue streams, you've got this, and fundamentally they haven't got that brand awareness, that strategic depth. And like you say, a lot of people don't have that. And I really, really celebrate, entrepreneurs that just think, I've got an idea and I'm going to go for this. And I think, like, whether we've got that background or not, in the last few years, I've invested thousands, and I know you have, Stace, in your own education, knowledge, wisdom, because there are constant knowledge gaps and the market is constantly changing and evolving. So whether it's like a one-to-one mentor or group program like with yourself, in franchising and different things like that, you have to, the best thing you can do is invest in yourself and your own knowledge, and then in freeing up your time to actually implement that knowledge, because there's always knowledge gaps, isn't there? Yeah.
It's so important, because I think, firstly, it's really dangerous to not stay up to date, because particularly if you kind of look at the last 6 years, just since COVID, the world has changed so much. Like, if we go back to like pre-COVID times, like the world was so different. We wouldn't be sat here doing this podcast now, in the way that we're doing it. And it's fascinating, but also I think it's really dangerous to I'm not saying like be up to date with everything. You can't be, but that personal investment, whether you're a franchisor or a franchisee, or like an independent business owner, because without that, how do you truly grow? And I think, again, it comes back to having that strategic training, like, and really valuing having a depth of knowledge rather than that surface level. Like, don't get me wrong. I think when you're getting started, I think it's important to have just enough gusto to be like, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
But to not then go back and lay the foundation underneath is exactly where we see people freaking out, because they're getting copied and not being able to stay ahead. And so sometimes you get copied I see this in franchising. Someone comes along, they're second to market when you've been first.
Yeah.
And then they overtake you. And the reason they overtake you is because they are investing in themselves. They are putting the strategy in place. And so they might have started with your idea, and nothing that you do is truly copyable, providing you've got the strategy behind it. And I think where the people really suffer with that kind of the copy culture is they stop evolving. They get so transfixed on what someone else is doing and how they're progressing that they stop evolving and stop investing in themselves. I think it's a real shame.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, there's that thing about kind of not so much staying in your own lane, but yes, being aware of what's happening, but making yourself and your business so uniquely amazing that actually, how can somebody just copy that or copy you? Um, yeah, it becomes so much harder.
Yeah, definitely. I want to go back to what you were saying about having creative individuals in a franchise, and how important it is for them to be able to go and, within the boundaries of the franchise, because we don't want to break the model,
Yeah,
fostering a culture of making it safe. Because I think a lot of people, they'd love to innovate, but they just don't feel safe to do it, or they feel quite restricted because they're in a franchise. But how is that something that you do at Nature Makers, Faye? How do you make it safe for franchisees to try new things?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I think, a lot of people want to go to a franchise because they think, I like the idea of it's a business in a box and I can go, okay, and get up and running faster. It's a proven business model. Success rates, across the board are higher than independent businesses. So it's got a lot going for it. But then comes the question of, oh, but am I going to be really restricted and have to follow all these rules and do all these things? And, it's like, our uniform, for instance, that we wear. Most of the other children's art activity providers wear t-shirts. So many of the, children's activity providers wear t-shirts.
It's all about the polo, isn't it? That's the polo that we were.
No. And we don't, and that was always a decision. If I'm honest, I'm not sure if in the early days it was a conscious strategic decision, but that was always this decision that now I can see is strategic, because we wear aprons. So what I see when I look at my team is an apron that all looks the same over the top of an individual whatever. Me, I wear big floaty flowery dresses most of the time. I do have a Lord of the Rings quote t-shirt on at the moment for my slouchy wear, but I want to see their personality, and I really, really look for that now when I'm interviewing and in the recruitment process. I don't just want anyone. We've evolved with that as well. We've evolved with who we're looking for now as well. And to make sure that we get those people that are saying, yeah, they're asking those questions. I don't mind if somebody asks me about the contract. Please do. It shows you read it. Go and pay for a solicitor to read it. Like someone recently said to me that's come on board, I want to start in the right way. And I'm like, yes, I want to start in the right way, because this is a long-term investment in both ways, and really looking for that creativity, so that my team, most of them, some of them have art backgrounds, but most of them don't. So where does that creativity show up elsewhere? Because I definitely think within a business, that's absolutely where it shows up, in understanding, not just saying, oh, I'm going to do this type of event, but understanding I'm going to promote it in this way, and then this is what I'm going to hope that happens, these are the goals I'm setting for it. And then when it's happened, actually stopping, reflecting on it, thinking creatively, did it work? Did I actually follow my plan? And then if it didn't, creatively thinking and sussing out why it didn't, actually, why didn't that work? And what can I do differently next time to make it work? That's where the real creativity comes in. And if I'm honest, working with people that are of a really high caliber and really creative, I'm kind of like the one that changes them up, like, hi, do you need a call soon? Are you okay? Like, how is it all going? And they're like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm doing this. And I'm like, brilliant. Okay, this is good. And that's what they tell me that they like. They like that they know that I'm there. The head office function is there. The resources are there to support them. But this is fundamentally their business. And they are in ultimate control of whether it's a success or not. They have to invest, their time, their emotion, their energy and money, and be creative and think creatively. And like with all of us, like you say, we have to invest. We can't just go, it stops there at that one recording. I'm sure you're like me, and we are on lots of different programs or lots of different things going on. We watch them all on double speed,
Yes.
and how many hours? My husband's like, I actually have no idea what that person is saying on your computer because it's got a thick accent, and I've kind of tuned into double speed, thick accent.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And so I want to see that in my franchisees as well. I want to hear that they've thought about what their blind spots are, the bits that they know when they're honest, same as me, when I'm honest, this is the bit that I don't know, and this is the next thing that I need to go and do. And then, be creative about that and what that looks like. Yeah, it's very
Wow.
important.
I think that really breeds the inclusivity aspect as well. You talked about neurodiversity there, and it's really important, I think, to be able to allow somebody to be themselves. And I think if they can pick out their own strengths and their own kind of areas for development, you get a better result at the end of the day, because it's not you banging a drum saying you've got to do this thing. It's actually giving somebody else, as you should in a franchise, really, the credit to stand back and say, do you know what? I know that you really know yourself, and what you know of yourself, I'm here to support you. But equally, there are lots of other channels for help. Not all franchises really give the space for this, from what I've seen, which I think is
Mm,
a real shame. And what you're saying there about,
yeah.
you want to see them show up as themselves and be individuals. It's
Yeah.
not a factory. We're not trying to create carbon copies of
No.
us. It's not about that at all.
No,
And
exactly.
what I really love about the identity of nature makers,
Mm,
you are all very individual. You are
yeah,
all really good
absolutely.
at assessing, like, I've worked closely with some of your franchisees, and they're very good at being able to assess, like, what they need, and they're very secure. And I think that, again, when you can make somebody secure and be very inclusive, it's the right combination for creativity and trying new things.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. It is. I think with a franchise, it is about creating the resources and saying, we know this works, over to you. But, sometimes people do need guided through a path, and I think you as the franchisor do need to have an awareness of certain parts of the path that they're really going to struggle with. So when you kind of, can pick them up at that bit, or just have a check-in, or, I mean, we've got every kind of 10 weeks, we have like an online, whole team kind of training, with something new. So what's new? What might they be struggling with right now, or what can we support them with? So, but I think ultimately, when I've been there, like you say, banging the drum. I've been there, dragging the horse to water as well. And I've had to sever that, because energetically, it took way too much out of me. And I think that's been the biggest learning for me in the last couple of years. Fundamentally, I want to work with the people who want to walk to the water and drink the water, not need dragging to the water. And I think sometimes in franchising, potentially there is a feeling for potentially people joining a franchise thinking, well, I've handed the money over now, it should just be a success. And so, I very much want to bring people on and make sure people are aware of it has the potential to be a success, but fundamentally, you've got to show up. You've got to show up and you've got to do the work and reach out for support. And, sometimes I think in business in general, and one thing I have seen with, people with neurodivergence as well, people can either find coping mechanisms that and have always potentially developed coping mechanisms to support them in their neurodiversity, and with, for instance, with overwhelm, or they haven't, and that's when they struggle. And it's not your responsibility. It's not you as the franchisor, or you can't then try and, give like 35, 40 years of conditioning and behavioral kind of, so it's about understanding that and kind of spotting that now at the recruitment phase, and making sure that they understand that. Yeah, you can see those things. And I think that does take time. That takes time, and not giving up, and that awareness and adapting things.
I completely agree. It comes down to the experience in the recruitment phase, doesn't it? Where, yes, you are in partnership, but you are not responsible for, and love your phrase in there in terms of, not trying to out train, habits of a lifetime, really,
Yeah,
because how can you expect to do that successfully when you're not in an employment situation where it's not like you
exactly.
can, run a in-depth training program and support them
Yeah.
with KPIs, and yeah, that's not really what franchising is there for.
No.
I love the way that you put them. Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. One thing that I'm seeing a lot of, and you've mentioned it here, like a lot of children's activity providers are becoming multi-generational. And you've said
Yeah.
they're your business pivot. Why do you think that is happening across the board? Obviously, you know why it's happening in your business, but
Yeah.
why are we seeing more of that, Faye?
Well, this is the thing, if you do take like a macroeconomic like look at actually the bigger picture of what's happening in the UK and actually the rest of the world, there is a lot of uncertainty. There is a lot of, the cash isn't flowing, despite what the government may or may not be saying. The cash is not flowing as it was pre-COVID. But we've got things, for instance, we've got the lowest birth rate. It's just gone down and down and down. So my daughter was born at the end of the last lockdown. I nearly said end of last. I say it. I'm like, oh, that's not quite that. You know, a long time ago. Yeah. And actually, that was a boom year, and we were all at it over lockdown. Clearly,
All aboard.
yeah. What else are you gonna do? So, that was a boom year, but since then, it's just gone lower and lower and lower. And there are franchises out there who just focus on 0 to 2-year-olds, and I'm like, where is your business case? Where are your clients? I would be worried for my franchisees if that was the case. So we've gone, actually, you know what we do, we can pick it up where we started at preschoolers, because that's what naturally just how we started. Actually, this goes really well into schools and nurseries, especially now we've pivoted into the well-being, and it's an accredited training through the International Practitioners of Holistic Medicine as well. So, we're differentiating ourselves from forest schools that are maybe based on site in the school. So we can go into schools, we can do after school clubs. And then we went, I personally started learning willow weaving, which is a form of nature art and craft. And so it naturally fit into what we do, what the brand does. And I went, gosh, this would be perfect for adult only experiences. There is a whole massive area that we're not tapping into that actually we really could. And so, now things like that are some of our biggest earners of turnover revenue wise. And, it means that we can say, well, what's happening across the year seasonally? And what about, in November, December, when, for instance, things are, slowing down or it's nighttime. So, nothing's happening after school. Well, actually, we just go to a village hall and we just do adult willow workshops. And equally, we're doing more in care homes now as well, or corporate work and retreats and things like that. So I think, you know, what we've done, how we've pivoted is been a strategic looking at what's going on in the market. For quite a while, I think we wanted to go, oh, it will all just pick back up. There'll be just more kids. And it's not just that. If I'm honest, buying behavior has changed so much in the last few years as well. People are waiting a lot longer to decide to join that event, and if we're not sending the right signals to the market as well, if we're like, oh, hey, you can just join whenever, we've got loads of space, it's not great messaging. So we're trying to, make sure that actually every event that we do is booked, and that actually every time we rock up and do whatever it is that we're having joy, we're getting paid well, and it's making an impact in the community, ticking all of those boxes really. And I think that's why other people have had to, I think, well, no, let me rephrase that. I think that there are some businesses and some franchisees that are not. They're not looking at what is happening, and they're still going 0 to 2s, 0 to 2s, 0 to 5s, whatever that looks like. And I'm thinking, okay, but your numbers are going to be dipping. So what is happening about that? I mean, clearly that's their issue, but, to survive in business, you do have to be looking at it all and thinking about the long term and what's the next step, and what I call conscious decisions. That's strategic decisions, but it's a conscious one. We're not just letting the wave wash over us and just seeing where we land. We're on that surfboard and we're like riding that wave to wherever it needs to be.
Love it. I love it. Comes back to strategy again though, doesn't it? Because I
Yeah.
think a lot of business owners, they start with the passion and they don't have the training and the expertise behind them in structure. And so I always think that things can happen for you or to you, depending on your mindset. And I think sadly there are a number of businesses where the economy and the lower birth rate and changes to like childcare funding as well. That's had a huge impact to children's activity providers over the last
Definitely.
few years. And
Yeah.
you can either sit with it happening to you and how are you gonna cope and try and manage that as best you can, or it can happen for you for the reason that, okay,
Yeah.
let's go diversify. And I think that that's so it's so empowering, isn't it, to have that second view of like, well, actually, you know what? We're going to make this work for us because who doesn't want full classes, happy franchisees,
Exactly.
and my favorite word that you said there was joy. Because when you're
Yeah.
single
Joy.
all of the time, it gets so hard.
Yeah.
And actually, to have the joy, to keep the joy in the business, I think
Yeah.
is sensational reason for change, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing. I think if you can't find the joy even in the challenging moments, and of course we've all had those times when we've just sobbed. We have.
Yeah.
But in the overall, if you can't find the joy, it's just not going to work. You're not going to be showing up as yourself and with the energy to actually move forwards. And energy is such a big currency in terms of, it's your greatest asset. If you can't show up and do the hours and do the work that needs to be done and bring yourself to it, you're not going to have the momentum. And actually, it's going to lose you, years of health, finance, financial return. So it's really important to get those those groundworks in place early. And like I say, I've made mistakes along the way and I've changed certain things and evolved. And I've got another business as well that brings all of this about as well. But finding the joy in just, yeah. And I think once I described it as well to my franchisees as like, I'm a bit like the doctor, not Doctor Who, but like a doctor, that you go to. And I don't want to be that, I don't want to be their mother and I don't
No,
want to be their employer and I don't
no.
want to be the doctor either. Those are three. I don't want to be any of those. I'm their franchisor. We have a different relationship. And so I don't want to just hear about the bad things. I don't want to be on the end of that call. We're like, oh, I don't know how to fill this. I don't know what to do. So, we celebrate and we support, Feel Good Friday. What's working? What are you celebrating? And I get to see, oh my gosh, like I haven't spoken to that person in like 2 months, but look, she's got how many after school clubs and she's doing this and she's telling me that she's having the best time ever. And I might not know that if it was just silence. And I think it's really important to have things like that, visible things like that, so that the other members of the team as well can see and go, oh no, didn't think about that. That's a really good idea actually. Or actually that person's, I like her energy, I like her qualities that she's bringing to that. How can I emulate that and have that in my area? Because one thing that we've seen in our franchise is that we've got such different areas and we've got some with real affluence and some with not. And sometimes people talking to me thinking about joining, I always say, do your research, do your, business plan. And we do that as part of the recruitment process now. But fundamentally, there's funding that can support that in different ways, whether it's in affluent area or public, with people funding their classes, or we've got, funding opportunities from councils, from charities in less affluent. So actually, I don't even know how I got onto that, but yeah, it
Finding the
can
joy. Finding
yeah.
the joy and finding the funding. I like
Yeah.
that.
Super.
Oh, it's brilliant. I think that celebration as well is super important because I think, I don't know your experience, but certainly mine working with franchisees is that you almost have to show them that it's okay to celebrate. It's okay
Yes.
to feel happy because we live in such a negative time, I think, at the moment. I won't get on my soapbox about that, but it's really important to show them that it's safe to celebrate because
Yeah.
it's infectious in the better way rather than the negativity breeding underneath the surface. So yeah,
Yeah.
completely. I really do. Faye, if you could do anything without the fear of failure, what would you do?
Oh, I think just, yeah, take Nature Makers, make it bigger, make it global. I probably wouldn't do a franchise outside of the UK. It would probably be a different model, a licensing model or a training school model, just because of the complexities. So I guess that's my head jumping in there. But yeah, I would really like for Nature Makers to just grow, clearly make more money, but make more impact. Actually, what I see from my team and the feedback, what's going on, and we have Community Give Back Week coming up next week, I think it is. That's our company-wide initiative that every year for expanded, exponentially in different areas. It's like, wow, like the impact that can have is huge. And if we could take it globally and bring that nature connection, that awareness of mindful skills and that creativity, I think the world would be a better place, to be frank. That's what we need right now. Get on that soapbox.
Yeah, it is that kind of spread the joy for sure. But I love the from a if you could do anything, it's grow, not just because yes, financially we have to recognize as a business, but the impact that you can have by spreading would be phenomenal. So yeah,
Yeah.
excellent. I hope that happens. I really do.
Thank you. Me too. Let's not just hope, let's make it happen.
Yeah, you got the strategy behind you. You can absolutely make it happen. Excellent. Faye, for anyone listening who wants to get in touch with you or hear more about Nature Makers, where do they find you?
Yeah, well, if you search on Instagram or Facebook for Nature Makers, you can find us and like us, drop us a message. And if you can visit the website, nature-makers.co.uk, you'll see all of the classes and the different areas that we've got going on and information about joining us as a franchise. So yeah, just reach out and say hello.
say hi. Faye loves a chat, so absolutely do reach out and say hi. Faye, thank you so much for being our guest this week. I've loved chatting to you. I love your
Oh,
strategic
thank you.
brain. I think it makes for such an excellent position as franchisor because you can really guide those franchisees that come into you. And I love how value-based you are, and I love how much you kind of foster that inclusivity and individualism as well within the confines of a franchise.
Of course. Yeah.
Love it.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Everybody else, we'll see you next week. That's
Thank you.
it. Take care.